Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good morning to you, wherever you may be. Welcome to the BigSpeak Webinar. This is Ask Mr. Wonderful with Kevin O'Leary. In addition to those of you who are logged into this webinar, we are also live streaming right now. So if you're out there thinking that this is some weird April Fool's Day joke, you're right, I am not Kevin O'Leary, but he is on the line and I'll be talking to him shortly. I'm Marianne Kuga, Marketing Manager at BigSpeak Speakers Bureau, bringing you week 4 of our webinar series. So it's undeniable that all of our lives have pretty significantly changed over the last month or so. I don't know about all of you, but I found myself really teetering on the edge, and what actually pushed me over was the clip of Hoda Kotb breaking down on the Today Show last week. You know, it was a good reminder that it's okay not to be okay right now. We're living in a very strange world that we're still trying to figure out how to navigate. I'm also reminded that I am very fortunate. I have a job, I can do my job remotely, I have access to whatever I need in order to follow California's stay-at-home order. The list of things I'm grateful for goes on, and I don't take them for granted. But the thing I'm having the hardest time with right now is feeling connected. I miss my family, I miss my friends, I miss my coworkers, and I find myself feeling as mentally isolated as I have been physically isolated. So I hope that today's webinar helps all of us feel a little more connected and reminded that we're not going through any of this alone. And with that, I'd like to introduce today's guest, who really doesn't need much of an introduction, Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary. Thank you so much for being here with us today. You want to get your camera on?
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I thought I'd have some fun using the Zoom background. That's the Shark Tank set.
Ah, there you are. Nice. Yes. Yes, I thought about changing my Zoom background, but I actually just couldn't think of anything. You know, thank you for being here. And before we really get into this, just a couple of quick logistics for the folks in the webinar, since we did switch platforms. You can submit questions via the toolbar, the button on the toolbar, and we'll be answering them throughout the broadcast, so you can ask them at any time. And you can also use the chat function to send messages to me if you have any comments. And this session is being recorded and will be automatically distributed to attendees tomorrow. Okay then, Kevin, how are you holding up?
Well, it's been interesting, as you suggested in your opening remarks. These are extraordinary times, and as a result, there's many changes going on in everybody's life, not just in North America, but globally. And I thought what I might do for a few minutes is just talk about some anecdotal information that I've been exposed to over the last 3 weeks, and just how business is being conducted, fund flows out of Asia and Middle East and Europe, domestic companies, of which I have over 50 investments in all kinds of different sectors, and general market conditions, and then some observations in terms of what I think is going to happen to various sectors. We've had remarkable experiences in things like the price of oil, or what's going on in real estate, or how the medical system is under stress. But let's just start a little bit about this massive correction in market capitalization. I don't want to get too technical, but there's never been a correction that violent before in markets ever. And the volatility, I'm going to keep it in simple layman's term, is extraordinary. It's on average, since we really started to think about the virus and the impact it would have on the economy, is on average 4.9% daily, which in itself is extraordinary. So on any day, the market can be up or down $1 trillion of value. It's remarkable. But what I'm going to suggest is happening now, and every day is different, of course, but for those of you that work in financial services or involved in the stock market or investors in real estate or private equity or whatever it is, there's a new index emerging globally, and I call it the COMO index, or the New York index. If you watch the correlation of world markets to the data coming out of New York every 24 hours, it's remarkable. When there's bad news coming out of New York in terms of number of infections, the markets tend to be listless and often down. If there's any ray of hope in terms of policy or a slowdown in the infection rate, the markets, or at least perceived, the markets tend to roar back. And it's extraordinary, the amount of volatility. We had a 9-hour trading session, sort of a day and an hour, where we saw 13% retracement, again in itself extraordinary since 1933, based on the premise that somehow locking down New York was going to be better and that we'd get to the peak a little earlier. So what I'm going to suggest to you is, as you watch New York, and that's, I mean, you can watch any city you want, but the one that's affecting global markets is the words coming out of Cuomo's mouth, because he's very articulate, probably some presidential aspirations growing there, I would think, from the Democrats, but also he is very strong on the numbers, and he is not afraid to just give it to you like it is. I have lots of colleagues in New York, family in New York, and we're all sitting on pins and needles there, obviously. So I would suggest to you, things will remain volatile until we see some good news out of New York City, and that is not happening yet. Okay, here's some medical information. I decided to do a little research on behalf of all my companies just to get, because there's so much misinformation about this virus and the symptoms, longevity, the viability of it. So I called up two doctors. I have a channel you should have a look at if you want to see this interview. It's called Ask Mr. Wonderful. It's a YouTube channel, and each week we post. And I decided to interview Dr. David Kanawaty, who was basically a ground zero for the SARS epidemic, another epidemic that started in China. That was not a pandemic, it was an epidemic. And also a doctor in Boston named Mark Solomon, who has access to the CDC data coming out of Italy and China. Two observations, in case you don't want to go through the whole interview, that I think are relevant. First, the bad news, then the good news. The bad news is that there is some speculation at this point, not proven, that even if you get this virus and spend this cycle of maybe 8 to 10 days going through the fever and everything else, and you recover, which is going to happen to the majority of the people, you may be shedding viable virus for as long as 3 to 4 weeks. And that may be one of the reasons that Italy has been hit so hard, because the culture there is to put 3 generations into one building, and a lot of affection, obviously, and the virus continued to spread that way. But then also, if it's true that it sheds for 3 weeks, and this is Solomon's observation, you can see it if you watch the video, that could explain why you're finding cruise ships after they've been vacated 17 days later with still viable virus there. Even though they felt there's only 2 or 3 people that had the virus, there may have been those that had been shedding it even though they felt well. Okay, here's the good news. And I found this extremely interesting. Dr. David Kanawaty, who was right there beside a doctor named Dave Lowe in the heyday of SARS, which was a very, very fatal virus. People died horribly from that, as you recall. Very infectious as well. But we don't see SARS anymore. And why is that? SARS never was able to find a human or animal host that it could keep alive like other influenzas do. So in other words, the reason you get the flu or can get the flu every year is it mutates a little bit, goes to Australia during the summer in North America, and then returns back slightly mutated. Well, it may be that this coronavirus, with the pretty little stubs sitting out of it, has not been able to mutate, and also may not be able to find a viable animal or human host that it doesn't kill or violently affect. A successful virus is able to find a host that it doesn't kill off. One of the reasons you don't find SARS anymore, when it was eradicated, it's simply gone. Doesn't mean it won't return in some different form, but that was the good news from what occurred in the SARS epidemic. Again, David Kanawaty speculated, Dr. David, that that could be the case for this virus too, that we will beat this thing and eradicate it, same way we did with SARS. And obviously, when people are concerned about their families, you want to get any news you can, but these are 2 experts that I decided to interview, got their data and put it out there. And we're certainly conducting ourselves across the O'Leary family of companies with a lot of isolation. This is not a virus you want to get. It can affect a lot of problems, even if you survive it, obviously, which most people will. Now let's move on a little bit to some observations about how society is changing. That's obvious in terms of how we're all reacting to it, but I want to bring it into the context of businesses. So in all of my businesses now, over 50 of them, we are running them virtually. We're using a product called Zoom, which is clearly going to be one of the companies that emerges from this a lot more valuable than it started. And as a result, the productivity is changing. And I want to make an observation here from several fronts. As an investor, let me speak to you this way. When we're learning how to communicate as we are right now together, it can be very, very efficient. And number one, what I think it's going to do is, and this is a personal opinion, but I think it's going to permanently impair the value of commercial office space. And I'm going to argue, here's why. Generally speaking, in a company, a private company doing, let's say, up to $500 million, rent can be significant, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20% in terms of all the rent they use for storage, for office space, everything else. It's clear to operators today, and I have many of them, they've realized they don't need all that space. When they emerge from this, whenever it happens, a lot of my companies are going to be going back to their landlords and saying, I'm going to cut my commercial space by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%. I'm going to be doing that in O'Leary financial offices as well. I have offices in multiple cities that I now know I don't need. Now, I wouldn't have taken that risk until I was forced to perform without that office space. Indeed, as we speak right now, with the new bill signed on Friday, all of my companies are filing for support for employees they thought they were going to lay off. Now, this is also an interesting observation, anecdotal, but you may want to use it for food for thought. So, in the case of this bill, the best outcome and the intention that when it was signed in the House at 2:45, we were able to start reading it about 3:10, and my lawyers and accountants went through that thing like a fine-tooth comb, understanding what it was going to take to file for our applications at all of our current accounts and regional banks. But my original thought was to say, okay, at each of my companies, offer two options to the employee base. Option one, you're going to fire 50% of them, furlough them, and bring them back if and when this thing ends, hopefully soon. Other option, everybody takes a 50% salary cut. Now, you might not be surprised to learn that the majority, over 90%, were going to take the 50% salary cut until we read the bill. The bill is intended to keep people employed. The best outcome for you as an operator is to keep all the employees and look for other ways to save cash for the next 6 to 8 weeks, just to support those employees, because if you're filing correctly, you're looking at a snapshot of your payroll on Feb 15th and comparing it to what your payroll is on June 30. And that bridge is the money that may be forgiven in your loan. This is all about employees. This is all about keeping the DNA of a business. This is all about keeping something intact for hopefully a short period of time. It's all about the people. That is not good news for some other constituents, and I'll explain. So maybe I don't want to fire the employees after all, or offer them half. How about I go to the landlord and say to them, look, we're not going to pay rent for the next 3 months. We want you to give us a break, defer for 3 months, and add that, tack it on to the back of the lease, whenever that is. The private landlords, we contacted them over the weekend, the majority of them understood it and agreed. The REITs, not so much. They're public companies and they're already under pressure, but now all of a sudden the majority of their constituents are saying, wait a second, I'm not paying any rent for 3 months and maybe we'll deal with this later, basically is the message. And they threatened, in some cases, litigation. And what I suggested to, in my universe of companies, and this is using my bully pulpit a little bit here, but I'm just telling you what happened, and it's happening all over America. I told those lawyers, send the complaint letter to me. Here's my email address, and I promise I will post it to my 4 million followers online with a picture of the CEO and all the people that may be forced onto welfare because of your decision. How about that idea? Immediately, that worked quite well. And look, I'm not ashamed to tell you I've done this. And believe me, this conversation is happening everywhere, everywhere. I'd argue as an asset class, REITs are a very bad investment going forward for reasons of reduction of used space and the fact that they're going to have some pressure on cash flows in the short term. And indeed, those prices have been reflected in corrections of all kinds of REITs in the Russell 2000. But there's something else I want you to think about that is on my mind as well. The real estate asset class is a multi-billion-dollar asset class and has been successful for decades and decades and decades. Today, do you think the long-term value of a highly concentrated high-rise Pick Chicago, New York, Miami, Detroit, LA, San Francisco, I don't care. With thousands of people jammed in there, is as valuable as it was 9 weeks ago? I don't think so. I'm not that interested in living and working in a building for 8 hours where there's 2,000 other people and I'm breathing the same air. I don't want to see 400 of them in the elevator shaft when I go there. Not because of this virus, for the next one and the one after that. I think now I'm speculating here, I'm talking permanent impairment in cap rates of real estate. So let's say a primo AAA office tower in downtown New York trades at a 4 cap. Those of you in real estate understand what I'm talking about. Perhaps when this is over, it's going to trade at a 6 cap, approximately a 20+% impairment to its value, which in real estate is a lot. So accordingly, because I'm just going on intuition, I have decided to trim my real estate holdings dramatically, just to wait and see what happens. You can call me Mr. Wonderful, or you can call me Mr. Rent It, because that's what I'm doing now. I'm renting everything, including this prison I'm in Miami. Everybody has their private prison now. I work out of here 24/7, and I'm sure all of you have noticed how your sleep behavior is changing. I'll give you an anecdotal story. I got hooked on season 3 of Ozark. I binge watched it over 2 nights. The ending is insane. A little hint for you, I won't tell you what happens, but I couldn't stop watching it. I ended up going to bed at 9 o'clock last night, got up at 3:30 and went to work, working on some stuff over in Asia and in Europe. My whole time is shifting, but I'm being really productive. And I am waiting for when we get out of this thing, because I'm going to change the behavior of all of my businesses, taking the learning experience of what's occurred here. Lastly, before I open up for questions, an observation that you might find interesting across this wide portfolio of companies I'm invested in. There are many that are not going to make it. They ran a restaurant, perhaps, or they ran an entertainment facility where they booked music acts or theater acts, whatever. Those are very, very difficult to understand how that's going to change. However, and I brought some just anecdotal, here's a little company called Blueland. This is hand sanitation, but it's not liquid, it's crystallized. They FedEx this little pill to you, you drop it in water and you have a hand sanitizer. How do you think sales are doing right now? Right through the roof. We're so far ahead of forecast, it's insane. We just are trying to get more product. Here is a company that makes aerosol oxygen. Same oxygen you breathe on a plane if the mask came down. I just took a nice breath of oxygen. How do you think they're selling right now? Same thing, through the roof, beyond anything we ever anticipated. Here's a company that makes a shelf that attaches to your window so you can put another laptop on it. Shark Tank company. Sales millions ahead of forecast, millions ahead. Shelf View it's called. Everybody wants one. I use 2 of them across the condo here so I can stand up and look out the window and work all day. The shift in behavior that's going to occur from this extraordinary experience is going to favor some businesses and take others to zero. And in a way, not to be Darwinian about this, that's okay. There's going to be some extraordinary opportunities created for entrepreneurs, and it's happening right now as we speak. And the economy, when it bounces back, will take care of those people that it hurt, because we'll be back to full employment, which is under 4%. I am hopeful to say that. I'm always an optimist about America because I invest in her. So the whole point is, I think it's going to be a transition accelerated by what occurred here. Let me give you another example before we open up for questions. You recall in the 2008 financial crisis, and that was, a real financial crisis. This is self-imposed one we're in right now. There was a whole new asset class that emerged, Indiegogo, if you remember, or Kickstarter. They were crowdfunding new ideas in America by the hundreds of thousands. But it wasn't equity. It was simply you got the product if you helped the inventor or entrepreneur build some inventory. Here's what's going to happen on this correction. There's a brand new asset class happening as we speak called equity crowdfunding. Its birth started a few years ago when the government approved the Jobs Act, which allowed prospectuses to issue up to $1,070,000 in tiny increments. Now, if you're an entrepreneur right now and you need capital, you're not going to meet with a venture capitalist. They've all run for the hills. They basically shut down their business and they're trying to keep their portfolios alive right now. But let's say you need $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. You can create a campaign, and if you have customers, you can solicit them and say, look, invest $10, invest $25, invest $100, invest $1,000, 200,000 people. And they will just give you small increments for equity, for actual shares of your company. And is this working? Huge. The biggest one right now is called Start Engine, and there are many others, but Start Engine was the first, and it was able to get scaled because it's done over 300 deals and raised $130 million, and it's got 250,000 investors on that platform, so it's got scale. And I'm using it for all of my Shark Tank companies. I'm showing it to them, and we're going to file those self-prospectus because every weekend they raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in tiny incremental amounts. We will look back at the birth of this nascent industry. We will say in 5 years, it was born out of the crisis, out of necessity for entrepreneurs in America that we could sell crowdfunding equity. And thank you, the SEC finally made it possible, and I bet they're going to make it even easier because this is what is basically funding America right now. I'd like to open it up for questions if you have any of me.
Yeah, sure. And actually, before we dive into questions, in the interest of all of us feeling a little more connected, I'm going to launch a couple of quick polls in the webinar to get an idea of who we're talking to and who we're spending our time with today. So first up, let's get this started. We're a speakers bureau, so we figure many of you are in the industry, and if you would just tell us quickly what your role is. I know we have a lot of meeting planners, and we have some of our speakers in here. We have some of our bureau partners in here, and as I'm watching this poll go, it looks like we have a lot of people who are not in the industry joining us today. So welcome and thank you. I'll give it just a couple more seconds here. Okay, so results of that, we have about half of us are in the industry as meeting and event planners. So I feel that's interesting, just to kind of give an idea of who we've been hanging out with. And then this next one, I'm just gonna launch this really quick. So there's a lot of advice out there about what's the best practices to work from home. And my personal favorite is get dressed and ready for work as if you're going into the office. So just curious if you actually did. If you are currently ready to walk into a meeting, more power to you. If you are rocking what's been dubbed the Zoom mullet, I love it. And if you are still in your PJs, you know what? You do you, whatever it takes to get you through your day. So I'm gonna end this real quick and share the results. So about almost half of us are in, maybe not quite ready to walk into the office, but the rest of us, maybe a little partially dressed. So that is good to know here. Okay, so I'm going to launch this last one right now, and this will segue right into the Q&A because we have gotten a lot of questions about social distancing. And I've actually made this poll anonymous, so hopefully people will be answering truthfully. And that is really, are you staying at home? And if you're not staying at home, why? And just wanted to be clear, so every answer that I loaded in here, either I or someone I know has received this answer when asking this question. So yeah, I'm curious. I know I don't mean to be shaming people in a poll here, but I really just I'm curious as to, as someone who's been home for almost 3 weeks, I'm curious as to people who aren't. Okay, I'm gonna give this a couple more seconds, and okay, let me end this here. Okay, so it does look like Most people are staying home. You have some people with essential jobs, and that can't, let's see, I'm sorry, let me share this result, and that we can't do their jobs remotely. Some people who don't have restrictions where they live or aren't sick, or I think we're overreacting and it's hard to stay cooped up. I'm seeing notes in the chat that other was for people who answered yes, but were not able to answer, to not answer in the second part of that. So that's what I'm guessing most of the other is. So to segue into the question, and thank you everyone for your candor there. A couple weeks ago on this webinar, we were speaking about having difficult conversations in high stress environments. And obviously this remains a very stressful environment, and you, Kevin, are obviously someone who doesn't shy away from difficult conversations. And there's people in this country and even around the world that are not quite taking this pandemic seriously. You know, people are still saying we're overreacting, or, oh, it's okay, I'm not sick, or going to the grocery store every day rather than just when we need to, or people who think they only need to social distance from the high-risk population and are continuing to hang out in groups of those that are outside of their household. And these are people who've seen the news and they've read the articles and they've heard from doctors and they've been ordered to stay home, and for whatever reason, it's still not clicking. And under normal circumstances, I'd probably say, you know what, we can agree to disagree. But with lives, and quite honestly, a lot of our livelihoods are at stake here. And so it feels like a conversation that still needs to happen. And I'm sure that most of us know at least one person like this. And I also know that it's way easier not to have these conversations to avoid conflict. So to get to the question, and thank you for bearing with me, how would you have this conversation in a way that might actually be productive, whether it's a family member, friend, colleague, or even folks that are signed in here today who aren't staying home?
My conversation with colleagues and family is simply to get them to listen to David Kanawaty's video from last week. You watch that video, this is not a virus you ever want to get, for a whole host of reasons. Surviving it, even if you get a mild case, can have some dramatic effects on your lungs. Those little attachlets on the virus tear into lung flesh at where it exchanges oxygen and nitrogen and gases. It's a brutal outcome. Even if you're in one of the survivor pools, there's some evidence that you end up losing your taste, and maybe indefinitely. We don't know yet from some of the cases in Switzerland. We learned that today. There's all kinds of problems with this. Why would you mess with this thing? Why would you ever take a chance, is what I tell my family and everybody I do business with. Why would you ever do that? What is the upside of that? It's just not the regular flu. It's not a common cold. This is a devastating outcome. Even if you obviously you don't want to die, and you probably won't, from the stats, but it has all kinds of potential outcomes that are really bad. So look, I don't want to, raise fear, but fear is a good motivator to keep you locked up in your individual prison. And I'm fearful. I wouldn't mess with this thing, and I went and researched that myself from both the doctor and the specialist in pandemics and epidemics. This one is nasty. That's my message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And I had a couple of questions asking to post the link to that video, and we will share that when we share that recording. So we'll share that link with everyone.
Worth watching for
yeah,
sure.
Definitely. I watched it and I was just riveted and, a little terrified and horrified, but it was something that I shared with people because I thought it was a really good, it made so many good points about why we need to be taking this so seriously. Okay, so getting into a couple other questions here. We've had a bunch of questions just about the impact on the meeting and speaking industry, and how you think the future of meetings might change for speakers and for companies who book speakers.
I'm pretty sure that we're going to be using the advances in technologies like this one to start holding events on a virtual basis. They're very efficient. You can have a very wide and broad audience, an international audience if you wish. The technology is getting easier and easier to use. So I think we're going to find some portion of the speaking industry is going to use this in addition to live events eventually when people feel safe to go out into a large crowd. But I think speakers, and I'm one, I'm just going to be honest with you, I'm not going to be doing any more meet and greets. I'm not taking pictures. I'm not shaking any hands. Not now, not ever. And not that I'm not a social person, but I think everybody's behavior is going to understand that. That's going to be a change in the way we act. And I think it's going to have an impact on all kinds of different large events, particularly music venues and theaters and restaurants. My favorite restaurant in New York, I won't mention its name, is jammed in a basement. Am I going back there? No, never. Like, never. I'm going to have to be seated, 6 feet from somebody and be yelling at them through my phone or something. I'm turning it to Howie Mandel. Now I get it. I get Howie. He's a germaphobe. I understand what he's doing. And regarding the clothing thing, I think that's really interesting. I have a studio in here put in by one of the networks so I can broadcast. I'll be doing Good Morning America from here. I'll be wearing this suit tomorrow, but I'll let you in on a little secret. I have no pants on.
Nice. I have a Cookie Monster pajama pants on right now. So
that's going to be the new normal. That's going to be the new normal.
Yeah, exactly. The Zoom mullet, it's a thing. Okay, so to kind of to follow up on that question, do you think that companies are still going to want to have people come in and do live events, even if it's kind of like the only going on stage and then kind of getting out of there? Do you think people will be gathering in these large groups for large conferences and wanting to have to bring in a speaker live?
I speculate what will happen initially until this thing is way behind us is that there may be smaller groups of executives that hire a speaker or an event that they host, but they provide access to it to a broader constituency virtually. And the technology is getting so good. I mean, when I do venues of 9,000 to 15,000 people, nobody's watching me on stage anyways. They're watching me on a screen near them. And so I think that's already prepared an audience for watching it virtually and probably getting much better quality, frankly. And I'm learning how to integrate all kinds of other data into these streams, as I have been doing in some of the meetings I've had with landlords, businesses, banks. I mean, I've got charts and graphs, and we do business all day long. This is probably my 7th or 8th video meeting today, and I'm using them very, very efficiently. And what I love about it, and this is kind of unique, another attribute, you schedule a meeting at 1 o'clock, it's going to end at 1:30. Well, guess what? It ends at 1:30. And you're cognizant of the time, and you're making sure that you're allocating it properly, makes you far more efficient. So I'm really liking this. I'm not happy that we're in a pandemic, but I'm now comfortable that I can make a lot of changes in the cost structures of a lot of my companies using these technologies, and I intend to do that. I am going to make it a challenge to save 20% of our fixed costs using this stuff. There's many people that never have to come into the office, and why should they? And that's the whole point. I think this is extremely interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so another question here. What do you recommend about sending out messaging to customers and prospects regarding the pandemic? I know we've all gotten, our inbox have all been flooded by how any company you've ever given your email to, how they're handling the pandemic. So yeah, what do you think about messaging?
Well, I'm going to give you the answer is an anecdotal answer. I have a company, might have mentioned it earlier, called Wicked Good Cupcakes out of Cohasset, Massachusetts. Largest commercial kitchen for cupcakes in America that's FedExed. Very successful Shark Tank company, acquired thousands and thousands of customers because of its television exposure. It grew a business of up to 30% for corporate events. So they would make, a cupcake for the Boston Bruins or whatever. That business has gone to zero, and it happened in 9 days. They were able to almost replace 100% of it within 3 weeks by going back to the individuals that bought for gifts, kids in college, bat mitzvahs, bar mitzvahs, weddings, birthdays, you name it. Just like you suggested, they solicited you online and said, look, help us. We're trying to survive this thing. We don't want to fire any employees. We've applied for the government grants. They're being just brutally honest with their customers. And you know what we're finding out? People in America care. They care. They actually buy two instead of one. They want to help the company. If it's an existing customer, now when you're soliciting a new customer, it's much tougher because you're competing now with, as you suggested, thousands of emails. But I'm telling all my companies, go back to the base. Communicate with the base daily. Tell them about the good, the bad, and the ugly. They care about you. If they're buying your product or service, they care. And in America right now, people are really bending over to help out. And it's just about keeping that employee base employed.
Yeah, definitely. We've definitely been seeing that as well. I'm sorry, I just clicked out of the questions. Excuse me. So someone asked, you mentioned landlords forgiving rent for 3 months, then tacking it on at the end of the lease. If you could explain that a little bit further.
So the proposal that most small businesses are making to landlords is, look, I cannot pay you for the next 90 days. I just can't, because I don't know when the government grant money is coming through or if I'm going to get it. So I need to find ways of financing my business, my revenues right up to zero. So that, you know, one of your biggest suppliers is your landlord. And you basically have to pitch the landlord and say, look, if you want to keep the DNA of this business intact, particularly if you were a great tenant for years, you're going to have to give me this deferral. So the way it works is, let's say your lease ended December 31st of this year. You're going to keep renting Jan, Feb, and March of 2021 under that plan. Most landlords are accepting that, not all, but they don't like to do it with restaurants because they feel disadvantaged with restaurants. So restaurants are having the hardest time right now in coming up with anything in any piece. But really, most landlords know, particularly public REITs, that they're just going to have to chip in like everybody else is. And if they have to suspend their dividends, people will understand. Their stock prices are already acting as if they have. I mean, it's a really tough sector. And I detailed my feelings about real estate earlier. But, you know, you're not going to get it unless you ask. It's that simple. You got to get on the phone and say, look, I want to keep my business alive. I want to keep my employees. I want to keep my DNA intact. I want to be your tenant for 5 more years. And the only way I'm going to get there is to survive the next 90 days. So I'm not paying the rent. Pitch it that way.
Great, thank you. We actually have a bunch of questions about the private equity and venture capital community, and just when you think that will get active again. You know, we have people who are in the middle of raising funding and now everything is just completely stalled. So when do you think that'll activate again, and what should people be doing in the meantime, you know, in addition to crowdfunding?
I think the current batch of venture capital funds are going to be looking inward for a while to protect the assets they've already invested in. My bet is there won't be a whole lot of deals for quite a while. And there's something else to understand about this change that's occurring. When you're a startup and you're trying to raise your first $1 million, and you go to a venture capital, a traditional venture capitalist, even if you're a great idea, you're going to end up selling somewhere between 20 and 33% of the company to one concentrated entity. And it used to be thought that that was a great thing. That you got a brand name VC in your first round. That's great. Well, along comes this change that's occurring. Along comes all these companies that have started up and said, wait a second, you want to raise $1 million? Why don't you raise it from 10,000 people, a few bucks at a time? You're not beholden to any one of them. You have a moral obligation to make the money, and you should want to make the money. You want to turn them into your customers. That's why they invested you in the first place. Except they gave you the money that you were going to give to one person. Now you have a huge base of potential customers. That is the #1 attribute that I find so interesting about equity crowdfunding this way, because it's a whole different dynamic. And so, you know, in my companies, I'm a traditional private equity guy. You know, I buy big chunks of the company. And every time I finance, I get more of the company. Well, if you're the entrepreneur, maybe you say, wait a second, why don't I just go raise the next round? I get to set the valuation. I get to set the terms. The problem with this space for the last 3 years is nobody got any traction because there are all these competitors. And what you really need is a platform where there's already hundreds of thousands of investors looking at each deal that comes in every weekend. I was planning on going into this business myself because I wanted it for all my companies, and I was going to try and use my social media to get it started. But then I met Howard Marks, the guy that started start engine. And he came up with me. He was the co-founder of Activision. I'm just disclosing my, and I listened to his team and the work he'd done with the SEC, and I realized there's no way to catch up to him. So sometimes you got to know in your beat. So I became an investor in his business and a paid spokesperson and an advocate, and I'm going to drive business to that site because it's way better than giving it to a typical VC. Those guys are going to have to sing for their supper for the first time, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, great, thank you. Another question, given the circumstances, many employers are putting holds on merit increases and reviews, et cetera. How long should employees be okay with not receiving a raise? And do you think 2020 will be the year of no raises?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be honest here. There's not going to be any raises in 2020. You have to be realistic. Nobody saw this coming. This is a black swan event. This is not going to, the competition for jobs, and there'll be some significant portion of the employment base out in America unemployed when this is over for downsizing and a bunch of other reasons. Some businesses will fail and you'll have to wait until that slack gets picked up by new emerging industries. But no. I wouldn't go asking for a raise right now. I can tell you what the answer is going to be. No, net.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Actually, a bunch of questions on this topic. Is this a moment for those who have been resisting technology that they'll be forced to embrace it? And do you think that, when we get through this, that people will kind of go back to their previous ways of resisting tech?
Great question. Genie's out of the bag. I've got an 89-year-old stepfather, living in a town called Doulier, just outside of Nyon, between Geneva and Lausanne in Switzerland. Village, 1,200 people. That's how the Swiss live. And they're going through the whole pandemic thing, and they've got their own rules in Switzerland now, including, you're staying at home. And all the services are delivered to your door, and they knock on your door, and you wait till they leave, and then you open it up, sanitize the cardboard boxes, all that stuff. I showed him Zoom 10 days ago. He's 89. The whole village is Zooming now, all 1,200 of them. And these are not spring chickens. So they figured out they can communicate amongst their interests. They're all Zoomologists. That's what happened to an elderly village of winemakers, farmers. I love Switzerland. It's a beautiful place. But they're Zooming up a storm there. And my dad was the first guy to do it in there. And he's, every day he's Zooming me like crazy. I mean, the guy's Zooming me every hour. And I get different villagers on there and different family members. I love it. Genie's out of the bag. We'll be using this tool and others. I don't want to just say it's Zoom only. I mean, and yes, I am a shareholder of Zoom. I've owned that stock for 2 years, I think. But it's sort of, yes to technology. Yes, it's going to be fantastic. And it's going to cut costs. I can't wait till I can get out of this prison and start working on implementing all this stuff into my businesses. I'm going to be whacking and hacking and slashing, and I can't, because now I feel good about it. I feel safe using it. I'm ready to rock and save.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And I know that that Zoom is adding, everyone, I think all digital, streaming platforms and video conferencing platforms are adding new features every day. And now just from saying like, oh, hey, can I do this? And, 1 week the answer is no. And the next week, oh, actually, no, now you can do that. That actually just happened with us this week as we were working through Zoom. So the product is already great and it's evolving just in general. So that I
must say their team gets it. I mean, we've been working with some of them for some of our companies in terms of rolling out different programs. That's a very, very interesting company that's virtual. There's nobody in an office right now. There's an example of one, and I don't want to keep blowing their horn, but they've done a hell of a good job. There was a lot of webinar services that just never evolved. And when I compare them, because I've been using this technology for years, compare them to what those guys have done, that's why I like competition. It kicks old sluggish ass, if I may say so.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that companies will be cutting down their marketing budgets for the rest of the year and into 2021, and looking for giving discounts and different 2-for-1s and all types of different things? Like, what do you see happening to people's just marketing budgets in general and how they're presenting themselves?
No. Marketing budgets staying steady or going up. For me, Facebook's a screaming buy right now. It's the only platform that lets you geolock, and I'll tell you why that would be important. Let's say you're like my company that makes these shelves and you've got a lot of inventory in Texas. What's the point of advertising it in New York when you have to provide free shipping? You lose 18% of your margin. Let's just sell it in Texas. Let's geolock our ads to using Facebook to Texas. Let's say you're customers and you're going to do a campaign on Start Engine and you want to sell stock to where people have tried your product or service, and that's in, I don't know, Illinois, geolock Illinois. That is going to be what happens for the next year or two. Facebook's going to be a major beneficiary of this. Love them or hate them, that platform is really powerful at times like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. How do you see companies shifting to work from home on the other side of this? Like a lot of large companies have been discussing this, and as you said, you're going to leverage this and think about all the people who never need to come into the office. Do you see virtual work continuing like vastly as we get through this?
Yeah, let me tell you why this is going to be interesting. I'll give you an example. I like using anecdotes because it's easy to understand this. I shot an interview with Maria Sharapova 2 days ago. And I didn't know how it would go. She was a guest on Shark Tank, and she's fascinating. So I said, let's do an Ask Mr. Wonderful session. You're sitting in your house in Los Angeles. I'm here in Miami. Let's use technology. We did. The interview was, she's a really fascinating person because I thought she was just an athlete. There's nothing wrong with athletes, but she's made the transition to being a CEO, an operating CEO. And that's rare for athletes. So anyways, I have to edit this thing because I want to drop it on the channel tomorrow at noon. Now, usually I'd go into an edit bay, I'd sit with a couple editors and I'd remember the interview saying, let's go there, let's go here, let's go there. I did it virtually with editors in different time zones in different countries. And if I got up at 3 in the morning, no problem, they're awake in Europe. Let's get online and help me cut this thing. And now that I've done that, I'm not going back to the bay anymore. I'm going to do it when I feel like it. If I get up in the middle of the night, boom. The time shifting of this technology is going to make people more productive. And virtual assistants, for sure. Why wouldn't you use people in different time zones if you're running a global company or products or services you want to sell in other time zones, like our manufacturing in Asia or Vietnam? Love pop cards. We manufacture in Vietnam. Why not have a virtual assistant on that time zone and a virtual assistant on New York time? Everything's going to change. This is going to be, I would have never done that before because I would be too nervous it wouldn't work. Well, I'm forced to use it now, and it works. So I'm not going back. And that's going to happen millions of times over. The economy is going to come out more efficient. That's what I think. And if you're going virtual, you can extend your work hours in any way you wish. Some people in my office like to come in really early and leave at 3 or 4. I get it. Some come in the afternoon and want to work till midnight. Working virtually, you work when you want, as long as you get the job done. It'll be task-oriented motivation. Here's a task for you. I don't care when you get it done or which hours of the day. Just get it done by next Thursday at noon. Done. That is going to be how things change. And I'm talking about big companies too. Financial services or manufacturing, obviously, as it gets more robotic, you can manage it from a distance. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening here. I'm an optimist. We get out of this mess. And if David Kanawaty's right, Dr. David, that this thing is not going to find a human or animal host, and we get rid of this thing, a lot of great things are going to happen in the American economy. A lot of great things.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a risk in a loss of collaboration? Because, as our company, BigSpeak, we're about 1/3 virtual. But if you live in town, we want you coming, and we've always said we want you coming to the office. We like that in-person collaboration. Do you think there's a risk in losing that?
I'm not sure why you care if you lose it. I don't find it any more productive than doing what I've been doing for the last 4 weeks online. There's no evidence to me that actually creates better productivity long term. And now you're going to have to prove it. If you want me to rent office space so you can sit there and talk to each other, you better prove it to me, because I don't need that cost. And every manager is going to be saying that to you. Prove it. Because if you can't, sayonara office space, don't need it. I'd rather buy you new technology for your home. You know, think about if you're raising children or you're doing something that, you know, you can do efficiently from a house. Not every business can do this, but the ones that can are definitely going to. It's not clear to me at all. I see no evidence. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. You prove to me that I need to put you in an office and pay $25,000 a month for it. Prove it, I'll do it. If you can't prove it, that rent's gone. I'd rather pay it out to shareholders. That's
Yeah,
why I don't like REITs right now. I'm really glad I don't own any.
yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see what kind of comes through with that, because I think that there are people on both sides of that who would agree with you that, you know, as long as you get the job done, you get the job done. But you know, on the other side of it,
Well, I mean, I gotta be honest. Part of it's I'm not a real buy guy. I like results, and I don't care how you get them. And so I don't really believe in the sit around the water cooler stuff. You can, that's just me. But you know, prove it otherwise. Sure, I'm all about results. Bottom line.
Yeah, definitely. A couple of questions that are a little bit unrelated to the speaking industry and everything, but you know, what do you think about like sporting events and concerts and theater and everything, and that industry coming back? Because the shutdown of those industries are way more, you know, affecting way more than the athletes and the actors and, you know, everything. There's so many more jobs at stake in those than I think maybe all of us realize.
Yeah. Well, I'll just speak as one individual who goes to a lot or used to go to a lot of sporting events and concerts. I'm not going back. Sorry. No chance. So you can send that to me and I'll pay more for it on cable or on satellite or virtually online. You can give me special packages where I can be sitting, you know, in a special seat virtually. I am not putting myself with 60,000 people ever again. I've gone full Howie. I'm a Howie Mandel. That's what happened to me.
All right. Well, you know, I'm gonna disagree with you there. I am at some point, whenever we get through this, I am gonna go back to baseball games. I'm gonna go back to the theater, and you know, will I be wearing a mask the whole time? Not sure, but you know,
maybe our culture goes to what happened in Asia, where you see masks all the time, because because they are effective in some ways, particularly in the regular flu season. I don't want to get the flu. I don't want to get any. I don't want to be sick. And if everybody says you're a germaphobe, you know, I know Howie Mandel. I'm going full Howie. I'm going to tell him that. Howie, I'm with you. A fist pump.
Yeah. Would you change your mind on that if we were able to have a vaccine? If we get a vaccine that really works?
Yeah, look, the vaccine and the therapeutics will come hopefully within less than a year, and I think it's marvelous. But this isn't the last time this happens. The planet's getting denser. The habits of certain societies to eat animal flesh that perhaps they shouldn't be eating isn't going to change. The viruses and all these pandemics, you can trace them back to some bad transmissions. Maybe the cultures have to start thinking about narrowing the food sources, because these are coming through, you know, transmission from animal flesh to the human. It's just, look, you know, I was fascinated by what the experts told me, and it started having me think a little bit about, you know, how should we conduct ourselves to be healthy our whole lives? I'm not, you know, I'm joking a little bit with the Howie Mandel thing, but why put yourself at risk? Because you're you know, getting the flu or getting a bad cold every year. Why do I have to get a bad cold every year? Why? I don't want to have one anymore. How do I have to act to avoid that? Does that mean I have to shut myself in the house? No, but there are certain practices like washing hands and maybe not going to really crowded places for dinner. And maybe that morphs itself into a different way of living. And I think I'm interested to study that and see that. I want to be healthy. It's a quality of life thing. And I've never focused on it this way. And now I've had a chance to, because I've got all this time in my hands, study it, read about it, talk to these doctors. One great thing about being a shark is everybody returns your calls. What can I say? I've been calling a lot of people, and we're talking about stuff that I want to talk about, and I'm passing it forward to everybody else that's interested. So I'm going to become kind of that agent of exploration of how to live a healthier life, not in a crazy way, but Yeah, maybe maybe I'm going to wear a mask. I wear a mask when I cycle around here. I ride 20. Yesterday I rode 20 miles. By the way, there's nobody on the boardwalk. I mean, it's like ghost town here. I went for 20 miles on the bike because the gym's closed. I wore a mask.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it'll be interesting because I know like we say now, like, I'm never going to go to a sporting event or I'm never going to do this. But like, it'll be interesting to see what we come up with, as far as like protective gear so that, the you and the Howies of the world can feel like you could go
I'll
to
be the
a
guy in
baseball
the
game.
NASA spacesuit. That's what I'll have on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I want to wrap it up in just a second, but one more question. We're getting a lot of questions on kind of the, we've been talking about how this is affecting the United States a lot, but we do have, few international attendees here who just are wondering like what this is really going to do on a more global scale, and maybe for some countries that haven't shut things down yet, don't have any cases, don't have widespread cases, what should they be doing, and how is this going to affect the world?
Well, I think the leadership in most countries have figured it out. My contacts in UAE and Riyadh, certainly in Switzerland, in France, Germany, England, everybody I'm talking to, those local governments are going to full lockdown. In the village I talked about earlier in Switzerland, full lockdown, all 1,200 houses. They're getting it. And that lockdown may be, if you go to the various industry sectors, and I've had a chance to speak to some of the auto manufacturing CEOs last couple of days, they're kind of thinking back in production mid-June. They're kind of trying to prepare for when this thing becomes a situation where two outcomes. One, they contain growth of obviously it's spreading, but also some percentage of the population, assuming you're immune after you get it, is going to be able to go back into the workforce without any chance of acquiring it again, as long as we find out with certainty that it ends up being something you build the antibodies for. So it's like the end of the flu season in that respect. So I'm optimistic that people are getting the joke. I've been talking to everybody in different states, all my companies. Nobody is congregating anywhere. There are anecdotal stories. I mean, I'm looking out at the beach here. I'm watching police arrest people every morning. Even if one person goes out there, bang, they're gone within seconds because they've got a helicopter, with infrared or something going up and down the beach. I like that discipline. That's good. And we need to do that for let's call it another 4 to 5 to 6 weeks. And that's why this is a great conversation we've had. We talked about how it's changing and how we'll all try different things. But as soon as we finish this webinar, I'm going to go back to my virtual editing and get the Sharapova thing online tomorrow, because I'm just loving it that I can do it this way. I mean, it's very cool.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much. We're going to have to stop here, but if you have any further questions for Kevin or me or anyone on the BigSpeak team, please reach out. We are here to help and support you however we can. As I said, we are recording every session, which will automatically be shared with all of you, as well as all of those who registered and were unable to attend. Kevin, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
I really enjoyed it.
Good, thank you. I know I speak for the entire BigSpeak team when I say how much we enjoy working with you and appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Wash your hands, everybody.
Yes, definitely. And to everyone out there in the world, including those who joined us on the live stream, thank you for being here. Next week on the BigSpeak webinar, we will be talking to marketing and culture expert Marcus Collins, who used to run digital strategy for Beyonce. And that is scheduled for this same time slot, Wednesday, April 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific, and the registration link will be sent out on Monday. And I hope to see you all then. Thank you so much. Please stay home if you can. Like, if you can stay home, please stay home and have those hard conversations with those who need to hear it. And hang in there. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.